Hey guys, I know we have 3 or 4 new killers to play with. Our dearest 2011X being shelved is probably a nice feeling for a lot of people, as playing him was miserable, and playing against him felt like either a cakewalk or unfair given the circumstances. So with that being said, I know the devs already have a set vision for what they want to throw in as a rework for him, but I'd love to offer my own take on how 2011X could look in the future. Something more befitting of his character, and more fun to play as, really letting you become a god simply toying with his victims. First things first, base invisibility changes, since I believe he needs some touch-ups here. Even if the base ability is serviceable, there are certain parts of it that should be changed for the sake of usability. Firstly, allow jumping during it. There is absolutely no reason to not allow jumping during invisibility. I'm pretty sure this is unintentional. It has to be in my eyes, as a traversal tool should not be limited by default, especially for a killer whose gimmick is being everywhere and is supposed to be scary and such. Secondly, allow by default the vision of everyone on the map during invisibility. A killer who's meant to be omnipresent should be. The fact that you have to be in proximity to people in order to see them is a drain on 2011X's ability to keep up with survivors. Lacking a good way to find survivors once lost on certain maps is not a good thing. Third, allow the usage of abilities like God's Trickery from Invisibility. At least God's Trickery, especially in this reformatted version I'll be displaying in a moment. A teleportation gimmick of invisibility can stay, but it would be nice if you spawn directly on top, as in above the survivor, just floating there for a moment to taunt the fact that 2011X is in fact a quote-unquote god, and can fly if he chooses to, but wants to have fun with the survivors, before shortly falling on top of them. This would also help in alleviating survivor tech where they have high ground and can simply turn their back over a ledge to avoid being caught in situations the teleport is supposed to be useful. Speaking of God's Trickery though, it has been a long sorrowful ability that after the first few months of the game saw very little use, as its gimmicks were learned and are easily avoided by most players. What if God's Trickery was something more befitting, something truly evil that splits up survivors, that allows singling out of targets as 2011X is supposed to? In my last video, I offered the idea that it should be targetable, and I would like to keep that thought, but instead, why not have it so the survivor you select is swapped with you? The same flickering happens, but when it's finished, 2011X teleports in place of the survivor chosen, doing the standard boo if close enough in proximity to other survivors. The chosen survivor being swapped with screen cutting to black as they reappear in unfamiliar surroundings. This wouldn't be usable unless on flat ground to avoid spawning survivors over fall damage, since it would be extremely unfair, obviously. During Last Man Standing, its cooldown would be set to 60 seconds no matter what. Given a smart EXE would just run to the opposite side of the map of the ring and reset your progress, something that should only happen once, if at all. Moving on, Charge has been pretty neglected as an ability, overshadowed by the fact you could just M1 survivors, and unrewarding in having an ability that could be lost instantly even if you get a hold of a survivor by someone simply stunning you. But what if that wasn't the case? What if the ability was actually threatening? What if it had any form of skill expression? I think that the initial startup of Charge should stay normal, but the fly should be faster. When you get a hold of a survivor, you continue moving in the direction you had grabbed them from for about 2 to 3 seconds. Think how Metal works when you grip onto an EXE using his charge, being unstoppable during this initial few seconds, while still dealing choke damage. If 2011X makes collision with the wall this time, the survivor takes 25 damage based off resistance, being slammed into it and having their wiggle progress reset on impact, continuing to choke them out against the wall. This would make Charge an actually scary ability again. Having any form of base damage and uninterruptible aspects would draw him more in line with future killers, while still needing some form of thought to be used when the ability is used. Survivors would get void damage resistance when this happens to avoid 2011X getting free damage on flyers or strategic pulls that would feel unfair on maps with such. During Last Man Standing, the slam damage would, of course, be massively reduced. With the main abilities out of the way, let's move on to the roughest of the rough that 2011X has. Rage Mode. Something that, while befitting of the character and containing cool aspects like pausing the timer, giving survivors something to be afraid of feeding, feels uninteractive to go against, and as the killer can feel like a band-aid to make a bad killer somewhat good. But I have something better to propose. Something that would separate him massively from the main cast while still maintaining a similar hopeless, searing feeling. Meet Hide and Seek. After enough damage is taken as 2011X, you can trigger it just like Rage Mode. You drag all the survivors into a separate dimension entirely out of petty anger. a twisted maze-like version of Green Hill, which is always randomized and sickening to navigate. A UI being granted to you in the top right corner, showing brief heartbeats of survivors and your current location. From the survivor's perspective, it starts as if they're being teleported using God's trickery, but instead being shown the "do you want to play with me" screen, being randomly placed around the maze of Green Hill, nearsighted similar to the effect granted by the moon, left to hide or attempt to find other survivors among the dark, a looming static growing ever thicker to warn them of 2011X growing closer. This would last for about a minute and a half, just as Rage Mode does, survivors being teleported back upon the timer ending in their original positions. This would negate the feelings of current Rage Mode, almost feeling like it nullifies singular survivors' ability to fight back, but also frustrating 2011X as they feel they gain no substantial lead outside of raw damage, an easier to avoid M1, and the ability to lose survivors in a super boring and underwhelming way. This allows survivors to fight back, but you do have heavy leverage in choosing what you want to do, and an easier time picking survivors apart one by one, as it is what he is made for. That's all I can think of in terms of a balance rework. I hope my thoughts are well heard and sound at least somewhat reasonable, that my vision is at least a little clear to those that are here to hear it. I know that this is likely very different to what the devs are actually going to go with, but I really wanted to throw my hat in the ring to see what we could possibly get in terms of creativity if they went all out in remaking him. While 2011X is no one's favorite, he is the spawn point of the entire fandom, and in such, I believe should be treated with a decent amount of respect for so. I'll catch y'all later. Got a Discord, got a Twitch, I stream pretty often. Have a nice day, folks. Take care.